James Bennett, a man in his late 40s, stood at the entrance of his beloved bakery, staring blankly at the dimly lit sign that read, Bennett's Bakery. The place that had once been the heart and soul of the neighborhood was now a shadow of its former self. The shelves, once overflowing with freshly baked bread, pastries, and cakes, were now bare. The smell of flour and sugar that used to greet customers had faded, replaced by the stale scent of dust and despair. James ran his hand through his thinning hair, his heart heavy with the weight of failure. He had poured his life into this bakery, but times had changed, and so had people's tastes. Big chain stores with flashy displays and cheap prices had drawn his loyal customers away, and the once bustling shop had grown quiet. Now, facing bankruptcy, James had no choice but to put the bakery up for sale. As he locked up for the night, a cold wind blew through the deserted street, making him shiver. He had always been proud of the bakery, of the way it brought people together, but now all he felt was an overwhelming sense of loss. He sighed deeply, turning to walk away when he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. Huddled in the shadows of a nearby alley, a man and a little girl stood shivering in the cold. The man, dressed in tattered clothes, looked exhausted, his face lined with the hardships of life. The girl, no more than 6 or 7 years old, clung to his side, her small hands gripping a worn-out stuffed bear. Her eyes were wide with fear and uncertainty, and James's heart ached at the sight. Without thinking, James approached them. "Hey there," he said softly, trying not to startle them. The man looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of apprehension and desperation. "I'm sorry, sir. We don't mean to cause any trouble. We have nowhere to go," the man replied, his voice shaky. James could see the man's pride struggling against the urge to ask for help. He could relate to that. He had always prided himself on being self-sufficient, on never asking for more than what he could earn. But seeing the little girl, her small face pale from the cold, stirred something deep within him. "Come inside," James said, gesturing toward the bakery. "It's not much, but it's warm." The man hesitated, but the girl tugged at his sleeve, her eyes pleading. He finally nodded, and together they followed James into the bakery. Inside, the warmth of the small space enveloped them, and the girl's tense shoulders relaxed a little. "I'm James Bennett," he introduced himself, offering a small smile as he turned on the lights, casting a soft glow over the empty shop. "David," the man replied, his voice still wary, "and this is Lily, my daughter." James looked at the little girl, who was still clutching her bear. "Hi, Lily," he said gently, and she gave him a small, timid smile in return. "You can stay here for a while," James continued, surprising even himself with the offer. "The bakery is closed, but it's up for sale, so I won't be around much. There's a small room in the back where you can sleep, and I'll make sure there's food." David's eyes filled with gratitude, and he looked like he wanted to say something, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he simply nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Thank you," he finally managed to whisper. James shrugged it off, trying to play it cool, but inside he felt something shift. A small spark of hope, perhaps, that maybe, just maybe, this act of kindness would lead to something better. For both of them. As he left the bakery that night, James couldn't shake the feeling that he had just set something in motion, something that would change his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. But for now, all he could do was hope that offering a place to stay to this man and his daughter would be enough to make a difference, even if it was just a small one. The days following their first night in the bakery were a mix of gratitude and quiet determination for David and Lily. For David, the bakery was more than just a roof over their heads. It was a second chance. He couldn't shake the feeling that fate had brought them to James's bakery for a reason. While James was out, attending to the final arrangements for the sale of the bakery, David began to explore the space that had become their temporary home. In the early mornings, when Lily was still asleep, David would wander through the bakery's kitchen, running his fingers along the countertops, opening cupboards, and breathing in the faint, lingering scent of flour and sugar. He had always loved baking, a skill passed down to him from his mother, though life had never allowed him the luxury to pursue it. Now, surrounded by all the tools of the trade, David felt a deep yearning to bring the bakery back to life, even if only for a little while. One evening, as Lily played quietly in the corner with her stuffed bear, David made a decision. He couldn't just sit around and wait for the bakery to be sold off. He had to do something. He owed it to James, to Lily, and to himself. So he rolled up his sleeves and got to work. David started small, using the leftover ingredients he found in the pantry. The first batch of bread was nothing fancy, just a simple loaf like the ones his mother used to bake. But as he kneaded the dough, a sense of purpose filled him. He lost himself in the rhythm of the work, the feel of the dough beneath his hands, the sound of the oven as it clicked to life. When the bread finally emerged, golden and steaming, the smell filled the entire bakery, awakening memories of better days. The next morning, David placed the fresh loaf on the counter, hoping that perhaps someone passing by might notice the smell and wander in. To his surprise, by mid-morning, the first customer arrived, a woman from the neighborhood who had once been a regular. She stepped inside, drawn by the familiar scent, and looked around, astonished to see fresh bread on display. "I thought this place was closed," she said, her voice filled with wonder. David, unsure of what to say, simply smiled and offered her a slice to taste. She took a bite, and her eyes lit up. "This is just like I remember," she said, nodding in approval. "I'll take a loaf." Word spread quickly. By the end of the day, several more customers had trickled in, all of them leaving with something in hand: a loaf of bread, a pastry, a smile. David couldn't believe it. He hadn't expected anyone to notice, much less come back. But they did, and each day the number of customers grew. Lily, sensing her father's excitement, pitched in as well. She began helping him arrange the freshly baked goods on the counter, her small hands carefully placing pastries in neat rows. She smiled shyly at the customers, who couldn't help but smile back at the sweet, quiet girl who had somehow brought life back into the bakery. David continued his work in secret, not wanting to burden James with what he was doing. He baked only during the early mornings and late evenings, ensuring that the bakery was ready to greet any curious passers-by who might be lured in by the smell of fresh bread. Each night, after putting Lily to bed, he would sit by the window and watch as the neighborhood slowly came back to life, one customer at a time. A week later, the bakery was bustling again. The shelves were filled with fresh bread, pastries, and cakes, just as they had been in its heyday. The once quiet shop was now filled with the sound of laughter, chatter, and the delightful scent of baking. David worked tirelessly, fueled by the knowledge that he was not only repaying James's kindness, but also building something for Lily, a sense of stability, of normalcy, something she hadn't had in a long time. David knew it couldn't last forever. Eventually, James would find out what he had been doing. But for now, he relished in the small victories, the smiles on the customers' faces, the way Lily's eyes sparkled with pride as she helped, and the sense of purpose that filled the bakery once more. He couldn't help but hope that somehow, this hidden revival would be the start of something new, something better. As the week drew to a close, David took a moment to stand in the middle of the bustling bakery and take it all in. He couldn't remember the last time he felt this content, this hopeful. Whatever happened next, he knew that he had done everything he could to bring this place back to life, even if it was just for a little while. And deep down, he believed that maybe, just maybe, this was only the beginning. As the week progressed, the transformation within Bennett's Bakery was nothing short of remarkable. The once dusty and empty shop had become a warm, inviting space, brimming with life and the delicious scent of freshly baked goods. The locals had started to take notice, and word quickly spread about the unexpected revival of the beloved neighborhood bakery. James Bennett, however, was unaware of the miraculous change taking place within his bakery's walls. He had spent the past week immersed in meetings with potential buyers, reluctantly coming to terms with the fact that his bakery would soon belong to someone else. It pained him to think of the place he had built from the ground up in the hands of strangers. But he saw no other way out of his financial troubles. On the seventh day, with a heavy heart, James decided to visit the bakery one last time before finalizing the sale. As he approached the familiar storefront, he noticed something strange. A small crowd of people gathered outside, chatting animatedly as they held bags of fresh bread and pastries. Confused, James quickened his pace, his heart racing as he reached the door. When he pushed it open, the sight that greeted him left him utterly speechless. The bakery, which had been cold and lifeless when he left it, was now filled with customers. The shelves were stocked with an array of baked goods, golden loaves of bread, delicate pastries, and beautifully decorated cakes, all arranged with care. The smell of baking filled the air, rich and comforting, just like it had in the bakery's prime. James stood frozen in the doorway, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. How was this possible? Who had done this? Just then, David appeared from the kitchen, carrying a tray of freshly baked rolls. His face was flushed from the heat of the oven, but there was a look of deep satisfaction in his eyes. When he saw James standing there, his expression shifted to one of surprise and concern. "Mr. Bennett," David exclaimed, setting the tray down quickly. "I didn't expect you back so soon." James could only stare at him, his mind racing to make sense of it all. "David, what is this? How did you do this?" David wiped his hands on a towel, nervous about how James might react. I couldn't just sit by and watch this place disappear," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "You gave us shelter when we had nowhere else to go. I wanted to repay your kindness, and this was the only way I knew how." He gestured around the bakery, his eyes filled with a mix of pride and apprehension. "I used what little was left in the pantry and started baking again. I didn't think anyone would notice, but people started coming in, and I guess word got around." James took a deep breath, overwhelmed by a rush of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, and a deep sense of awe at what David had accomplished. "I can't believe this," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You brought the bakery back to life, on your own." David shook his head, humility shining through his words. "It wasn't just me, Mr. Bennett. This bakery, it has a life of its own. The people in this neighborhood love it as much as you do. I just gave them a reason to come back." James felt a lump form in his throat as he looked around at the bustling bakery, his bakery, now filled with life again. He had been ready to give up, to let go of everything he had worked for. But David's determination had changed everything. This wasn't just a bakery, it was a symbol of hope, of resilience, and of the power of kindness. "I don't know what to say," James finally managed, his voice breaking. "You've done more than I ever could have asked for." David smiled, relief washing over him. "I'm just glad I could help. But this place, it's yours, Mr. Bennett. I was only keeping it going until you came back." James shook his head, a new idea forming in his mind, as he looked at David and then back at the bakery. "No, David, this place belongs to both of us now. I've been struggling to keep it afloat, but you've shown me that it still has life left in it. If you're willing, I'd like us to be partners." David's eyes widened in disbelief. "Partners? But You're just the person this bakery needed," James interrupted, smiling through his tears. "You have the heart, the skill, and the passion to make this place thrive again. Together, I believe we can make it something truly special." David was at a loss for words. The idea of being a partner in the bakery was something he had never dared to dream of. But now, standing here in the place that had become his second home, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. I don't know what to say, Mr. Bennett. Thank you," David said, his voice filled with emotion. "I would be honored." James extended his hand, and David took it, sealing the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives. As they stood together in the heart of the revived bakery, surrounded by the hum of happy customers, they knew that this was only the start of something greater. Neither of them could have imagined that an act of kindness, a simple offer of shelter, would lead to this moment. But here they were, ready to face the future together. The bakery that had once been on the brink of closure was now a beacon of hope, not just for James and David, but for the entire community. And they were just getting started. The news of Bennett's Bakery's revival spread like wildfire through the town. Customers returned in droves, excited to taste the familiar treats they had once loved. The once struggling bakery was now a thriving hub of activity, thanks to the combined efforts of James Bennett and David. Their partnership quickly became the talk of the town, not just for the delicious baked goods, but for the inspiring story of how an act of kindness had turned into something extraordinary. As the weeks passed, James and David worked tirelessly to keep up with the demand. They experimented with new recipes, added fresh touches to the decor, and even began hosting community events at the bakery. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous, and it soon became clear that Bennett's Bakery was destined for greater things. One day, as James was going through the books, he noticed something astonishing. The bakery's profits had not only stabilized, but they were also exceeding anything he had ever seen before. The success was beyond his wildest dreams, and he knew that it was all thanks to the new energy and passion David had brought into the business. It wasn't long before people started approaching James with offers to invest in the bakery. Local businessmen, impressed by the turnaround, saw the potential for expansion. James, who had once struggled to keep the bakery afloat, now found himself faced with an incredible opportunity, one that could change his life forever. But as James sat in his office, looking over the contracts and proposals, he couldn't help but think back to the moment when he first met David and his daughter. They had been down on their luck, just like the bakery, and yet through their hard work and determination, they had managed to turn everything around. It was then that James realized the true value of what they had created together. This wasn't just about money or business. It was about people, community, and the power of kindness. With this in mind, James made a decision. He called David into the office and shared the news. "David, I've been thinking about the future of this bakery," James began, his tone serious but filled with excitement. "We've been approached by several investors who want to help us expand. They see what we've done here, and they believe in us. They want to help us take Bennett's Bakery to the next level." David's eyes widened in surprise. "Expand? You mean more bakeries?" James nodded. "Yes, franchises, to be exact. They want to help us open more bakeries in other towns, maybe even other cities. They think we have something special here, and they want to share it with the world." David was silent for a moment, processing the enormity of what James was saying. The idea of expanding the bakery, of taking what they had built together and sharing it with more people, was both thrilling and terrifying. "But," David hesitated, his voice filled with uncertainty. "Are we ready for something like that? I mean, this bakery, it's our home. Can we really do this on a larger scale?" James smiled, understanding David's concerns. "I've thought about that too," he admitted. "But I believe we can. What we have here is more than just a bakery. It's a symbol of hope, of second chances, and I think that's something worth sharing. With the right partners, we can do this. We can keep the heart of this place alive while bringing it to others who need it." David looked at James, seeing the determination in his eyes, and felt a surge of confidence. If there was one thing he had learned over the past few weeks, it was that they could accomplish anything together. "All right," David finally said, a smile spreading across his face. "Let's do it. Let's expand." And so, the journey began. James and David worked closely with the investors, carefully selecting locations for their new bakeries. They made sure that each new shop retained the warmth and charm of the original Bennett's Bakery, ensuring that the essence of what they had created was preserved. As the months passed, Bennett's Bakery franchises began popping up in neighboring towns, each one as successful as the last. The story of the bakery's revival became a source of inspiration, and people from all over came to visit the original shop, wanting to experience the place where it all began. James and David's partnership grew stronger with each new success. They became not just business partners, but close friends, bound by the shared experience of bringing something special to life. The bakery, once a symbol of struggle, had become a beacon of hope and success. But the biggest revelation came when James received a letter from a major national chain of bakeries. They had heard about Bennett's Bakery and were interested in a potential partnership, one that could take their brand across the entire country. The offer was beyond anything James could have imagined. When he showed the letter to David, the two men sat in silence, the weight of the opportunity sinking in. This was it, the chance to make Bennett's Bakery a household name, to take their story of kindness and resilience to a national level. After a long conversation, they agreed to move forward, but on their terms. They wanted to ensure that the heart of Bennett's Bakery remained intact, that the essence of what made it special was never lost, no matter how big they grew. And so, Bennett's Bakery expanded once again, this time on a national scale. The story of how a bankrupt bakery was revived by a poor man and his daughter, who were given a chance when they had nowhere else to go, resonated with people everywhere. It became a symbol of what could be achieved through kindness, hard work, and the belief in second chances. James and David continued to lead the business, always staying true to the values that had brought them together. They never forgot where they came from or the journey that had led them to where they were. And through it all, they remained humble, grateful for the life-changing revelation that had turned their lives around. In the end, Bennett's Bakery became more than just a successful business. It became a testament to the power of kindness, partnership, and the belief that even in the darkest times, there is always hope for a brighter future. Thank you so much for watching this story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to hit the like button and give us a thumbs up. We'd love to hear what you think about Gabriel's journey. So drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. And if you have any ideas or themes you'd like to see in future stories, share them with us. We're always excited to hear your suggestions. See you in the next story.